Good morning, everybody. Good evening if you're in Europe like myself. This is Stone Mountain Sunday meditation, and it's December 12, 2021. My name is Kaisu, and I'm actually leading the Sunday meditation for the first time, which is very, very exciting. So I'm going to invite you to join with me co-creating this field. Know that we're going to spend the coming hour together. So we're going to start with our aspiration prayer. So if everybody have our laminated sheet, we're going to do the aspiration prayer and then Shantideva verse. So we're going to start with that. May all beings always have happiness and its causes. May all beings always be free of pain and its causes. May all beings always be pain-free and live happily. May no beings ever cling to those near nor spurn those far. For as long as space abides, as long as the world remains, just so long may I be there, resolving all beings' pain. So before we enter the actual meditation practice, I'm gonna briefly reflect upon the current Dharma Conversations, Dharma Explorations series. But while I do that, I'm gonna invite you to already start settling into a meditative posture and kind of settling into the space we're in together. So you can just start by feeling your seat. I'm gonna do the same since my energy is quite high. Just you can take a moment to feel your feet. Take a deep breath, maybe sigh. And just, you can gaze softly downward. If you happen to be really sleepy, you can open your eyes a little bit more, but I'm just gonna keep my gaze slightly downward, but I'm aware of your presence. So what I wanted to share this morning with you is, so the past Dharma Exploration series with Renee and Nathaniel has been on 6 perfections. And actually, I'm just going to briefly reflect upon the last session, which was actually just a few days ago on Tuesday. So what I'm going to say is very fresh and very spontaneous. So this is not a teaching. This is just me exposing my stream of mind as I'm trying to weave in the rich teachings they've offered into my spiritual, but also my artistic and activist practice. So what I took away from that, what stood out from me is that Renee and Nathaniel talked about wisdom, not as knowing something specific, having studied this or that, but wisdom in relation to emptiness. And further, emptiness not as some kind of a black hole where there's just nothing ever there, but emptiness as a kind of a space, as a potential space. Actually, how I understand it, and how actually also in Buddhism it's often presented, that is a creative space. That is where new things can emerge. So this space, understanding that, wisdom as that instead of some kind of cerebral knowledge. So I was just really inspired when they introduced this viewpoint, and also thinking of wisdom as a way of being. And if you consider that as a way of knowing, that is a kind of an embodied intuitive knowledge. And this sounds very familiar to me, or this is something I can relate to. So maybe there are different ways of understanding what they offered. I'm sure there is actually. Now, how this got even more exciting and inspiring for me is that when Harvila introduced the viewpoint that we as Western Dharma practitioners often concentrate on qualities of compassion and love, and we wonder how would we cultivate more of those, and we kind of prioritize or just give them a lot of value and aspire projecting these qualities. But as such, so Harvila presented a viewpoint that without the presence of wisdom, literally presence of wisdom, these qualities have a risk actually turning into sentimentality, which we don't really aspire to project. So the understanding that wisdom can have both be compassionate, but also ferocious. So I think this is something new to, at least for me, to really actively consider. How do I practice this in the world? And what I'm going to use as a kind of an illustration, and everybody has their own kind of practices. But so I am currently interested in merging my Dharma practice with my artistic and environmental actions. So I've been engaging with communities such as Mind and Life Institute, XR Buddhists, and One Earth Dharma. There are so many communities currently active within mergers of Dharma and environmental activism. So in 3 weeks, I'm going to do an artistic residency in northern Finland in the Arctic region on climate crisis, basically the impacts of the permafrost thaw and the future, not just the greenhouse gases that are being released by that, but also the future potential pandemics that are emerging from that process of thawing. Also, what the impact of this is on the local indigenous communities, their central animals, their traditions such as reindeer. So thinking of the strip, which I consider as a kind of a spiritual, creative, activistic endeavor, how I think of the wisdom, but also the ferocious and a kind of an active part that emerges from the emptiness, you could say, is that, and this is how things often link, or they just so-called coincidentally happen to you. But I was just recently talking to a Vajra sister who introduced me to Zen Peacemaker, the 3 tenets of the Zen Peacemakers. And these were initially developed and articulated, I'm not going to read from my notes, by Roshi Bernie Glassman in 1994. So I'm just going to now go briefly through these 3 tenets and reflect how do I see that merging with this wisdom, emptiness activity through my practice. So the first tenet is not knowing. Not knowing is entering a situation without being attached to any opinion, idea, or concept. This means total openness to the situation, deep listening to the situation. So I do consider this in my experience relates somehow to the emptiness aspect of wisdom. And it takes quite some courage actually as a Westerner to do that, because we're so inclined to plan everything to the most detail. So in order for me to arrive in a setting like I'm going to, which is previously unknown to me, I would probably feel safer if I would have a clear plan. What's going to happen? What am I going to do? What am I going to film? I'm working with cameras. However, I also know experientially and from teachings, this will greatly limit my my better understanding of the place for starters, but also the experience is not the richest, authentic one if I'm already in the tunnel vision of just kind of producing my own film, literally. So to trust that I can enter, I have enough preparation, I have enough teachings, I have enough environmental knowledge that I can travel to a site new to me and dare to just be there. So it is also a kind of beginner's mindset. So trying to see everything very freshly. Now I notice everything I'm saying like fresh, it's going to be very cold there. I don't know. Also the language matters, like how, but so now in your presence, me going through this is actually making it even more richer than if I would just think about this. So, okay, moving on. So the first tenet, not knowing. The second tenet, bearing witness. It is the role of the bodhisattva to bear witness. The bodhisattva vows to save the world. Bearing witness gives birth to a deep and powerful intelligence that does not depend on study or action, but on presence. We bear witness to the joy and suffering that we encounter. Rather than observing the situation, we become the situation. This is just so beautiful, really. And to me, I'm immediately, there is some kind of a permeability that the borders, the body borders, your mind borders, it is an active surrendering in a way in the setting and situation where you are. Also, it is lessening of your sense of self. You're not there to do your observations and immediately document and monitor these, but really bearing witness, it is also a gesture of trust because oftentimes we're so focused on making and doing. Also as artists, actually, a lot of people would probably say being an artist means you're making something. However, I'm just so agreeing with one of my great artist colleagues, Terike Haapoja, who's written, actually the precondition to make anything is artistic being. And this really comes close to this bearing witness, and even prior to that, not knowing. So there's just very something very fundamental and fundamentally different in how we usually travel to places, even when we travel there to study something. So also, I have to say that, and by the way, I'm in no means an expert of these three tenets of the Zen peacemakers. So I just found these recently, and I'm now learning these with you in a very beginner's way as well. But I did learn that they are organizing bearing witness retreats in socially, politically very, very disturbed, challenging locations such as Auschwitz and Rwanda. And there is just something very powerful, even just hearing this, let alone allowing ourselves to imagine how could we do something like that? What would that mean? What would that require? Actually, intuitively, we've done something similar through my theater school times. We actually did a field trip to a concentration camp, and it did result in some form of bearing witness instead of just starting to make something. So I have, out of the context of the Zen peacemakers, but personally experienced what this could mean. And I do think it's going to be, it is very potent and powerful. However, there is a third tenet, and that is taking action. So, and this is where I think the ferocious part also of wisdom, logically, probably not the only way it can manifest itself, but really, to me, the taking action based on your not knowing, bearing witness. This action is something that arises, they say, naturally when one enters a situation in the state of not knowing and then bears witness to that situation. So how I think of my wisdom emerging from the emptiness, if I dare to allow it, and the ferociousness that will emerge, given that this is a site of significant human and animal and environmental suffering, it is not about me. So in some sense, I do feel intuitively that it probably involves giving voice, facilitating others to speak, and also seeing that sometimes non-activity is activity. So by activity and taking action, this here is not referred to just like activism as an active, any kind of single action, but really activity is non-activity. Non-activity is activity. I know Rinpoche has said this. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact reference where it came from, but so this is actually the reflection I wanted to give on wisdom as an intimate relationship with emptiness, which can lead to ferocious action. And by that, I'm going to invite you to begin the meditation practice with me. So if you manage to settle a little bit during my talk, if not, that's also fine. Let's just all take a deep breath and sink into our seats. Feel our feet again. That's often so helpful for me. Just tune into your body, the vibrations of it. Again, you can moderate with your eyelids, kind of depending if you're sleepy. Please keep your eyes a little bit more open. If you're restless, it might be beneficial to keep them closed or just softly, just open a little bit. And just settle into this field that we're now co-creating together this Sunday morning. Just returning into the here and now after my reflections and stories of other places. We're just now here as practitioners, as Sangha, settling into our meditation practice. And the practice we're going to do right now, I think most of you are very familiar with it. Just in case there's someone new in YouTube or someone watches this later, just going to briefly describe the two components that this practice is consisting of. So we're going to begin with the first modality, if you like, which is focusing, paying our attention, placing our attention on our breath. And we're going to do that silently in our own pace and rhythm. And when we're placing our attention to our breath, we can do that in several places of our body. We can place our attention just under our nostrils. Maybe we feel comfortable feeling it on our chest. Or if we're able to relax more deeply, we can place our attention to our lower belly as it moves alongside with our breath. Sometimes it's also helpful if you're more or less restless to follow the breath as it goes up and down, moves up and down along your torso. So all this doesn't really matter. So all that matters is really that you gently place your attention to your breath. And if your mind follows some line of thinking, when you notice that, you can just gently return back to your breath. And we're just going to do that for a couple of minutes. And when we begin with the second modality of this practice, I'm going to explain that briefly at that point. So we're just going to now follow our breath. So we're now going to enter the second part of the practice, second modality, and that involves chanting the sacred syllable home. And we're all going to do that, if we're comfortable, in our own pace, the rhythm of our breath, and saying hung hung twice during each out breath. And if you're comfortable, I'm going to invite you to open your microphone so we can create this unified field of sound as well. And with this modality adds to the existing following our breath is really kind of a different dynamic and vibration in our body, which can really offer avenues to deeper calm or better sense of our presence and so forth. So we're gonna now for a couple of minutes chant Om Hum. Om. And we're just gently going to return back to our breath, following our breath. And we can just, with curiosity, observe and pay attention. Has our sense of being, sense of presence shifted in any way after chanting or not? It's both okay and everything in between. We're not going to continue sitting in silence, gently and curiously following our breath. And again, for a couple of minutes, we're going to shift into chanting Hong Hong. Hong Hong. We're gonna settle again, placing our attention to our breath in silence for a few more minutes. Before we close our practice, I'm going to invite you to briefly check in with yourself, whether something has shifted in your experience since we started, whether it's been a roller coaster, whether it's been a flat line, or something else. Just make a note of that. And gonna then invite you to slowly return to the room you're sitting in and into our shared space here as Sangha. We're now going to, let me see, do the dedication and blessing together. And so if people in YouTube still want to add some names into the prayer book, you can do so. I'm going to read them in a sec. And we're now going to do dedication and blessing. By this good may I swiftly once become a great guru, lead all beings, everyone, to reach to that very ground. With all of you in mind, we light this lamp of clarity. May the glow of love, wisdom, shine within us, everyone, till we all rise forth born in one enlightened mandala. And we're going to dedicate the merit of our practice today for all living beings, and especially to Tom Griffin in the Bardo, Rachel Chandler in the Bardo, Mike McMahon in the Bardo, Joanne Snyder and family, Carolyn McKnight and family, Kate Hutton and family, Deborah Ossery, Selva Gamo, Sylvia, Rolando, Nathaniel, Emma, Ed, Leah, Beata Chick and husband, Beverly McGregor, Beata, our teachers, our Sangha, Carolyn McKnight and family, Kentucky tornado victims, Alberto, Reba Chaliman, Bardo, Anna, Eric, Paula, Chris, and Mike, for Angelica's recovery, for Dr. Juan's recovery, for Mike Leon's healing and peace of mind, Patrick, our broadcast team, Planet Earth. And we're going to conclude our practice by chanting the sacred syllable Ah together. And we can visualize white light radiating from our center of our chest across the city we're in, the state, the country, the continent, the planet, throughout the universe as far as our imagination can go. Thank you, everybody, for joining me and us this morning. I appreciate it so much. Felt really supported by the Sangha. So delightful to see you all. Now, Emily, are there any announcements that we want to make? And I see we still have a couple of minutes anyway.
So there are announcements. I don't know if Harvey wants to give the announcements or I can go ahead and do it.
No, you can go ahead and do it.
Okay, awesome. So Tuesday, December 21st, the Sangha in Houston will come together in person at Govinda's vegetarian buffet for kind of a holiday greeting dinner at 7 p.m. In January, we have our next Dharma exploration series begins. It is Buddha Nature, Your Buddha Mind. Buddha Mind, Your Buddha Nature, sorry. And that begins January, Tuesday, the 18th. We will also have a retreat with Lama Tenzin, The Mind of Right Now, starting Friday, January 21st, as well as a really exciting beginner's course from Claire on January 10th, and that is Awake in Daily Life. And that's everything.
And there's a practice, isn't there a Yeshit Sogel practice today?
Yes, today is the bi-monthly peer support, peer-led Yeshe Sogel practice, and that is at 1 p.m. Central.
So many rich offerings, looking forward to. And if I don't see all of you before, I'm gonna wish you a very happy rest of the year, winter retreat, however you're gonna spend it. So thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Have a good holiday.
Thank you so much, Kaisu. It was wonderful. Very inspiring.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Love to you. Bye-bye.
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 Thank you, Emily.
Emily, can you stay on for 1 second?
Yes.
After everybody signs off?